This form is incredibly simple and it's the starting point for so many projects. But today I'm making versatile baking dishes. Let me show you how easy they really are. I'm using my favorite yellow speckled clay. And although I'm cutting it from the pack, I wedge a little to make sure it's beautifully prepared. I'm making 2 sizes of dish and I'm hoping that they'll nest. I'm using 2.5 kilos of clay for the larger size and 2 kilos for the smaller size. I'll make the larger dish first and I'll start by centering. So this might be a large piece of clay, but my clay is quite soft. My first move centering is to bring the clay to the center by pushing the clay into a cone. Soft clay is really ideal for this project as I need to move the clay around a bit. And now I can start to cone up. So I squeeze the clay up into a tall cone. And then I push the clay back down. Because my clay is soft, it's relatively easy to move my clay around. I flatten the clay out to just a little wider than the diameter of the dish. And then I push down into the clay. I want to leave around 1 centimeter in the base. As I mentioned in the introduction, this shape is so versatile. It's the basis for my tiffin, for my steamer, and many other projects. I compress the base with a sponge. Compressing the clay really does help prevent cracking. To stay up to date with our many projects, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And then I can pull up the walls. Notice I keep the walls slightly angled inwards for the first few pulls. This really helps control the shape. And I compress the rim to keep it even. Because the clay is very wet, I can use a sponge in one hand as I pull up the walls. I find it helps keep the pressure even. I straighten the walls. I like to use my wooden rib for this. And I finish the rim with a chamois. This gives me a gentle rounded rim. I trim just a little around the base. I feel as if this makes a little bit of a guide for the wire. And it keeps the base a little neater. And then I wire through. And I set aside to dry to leather hard. I make a second dish with 2 kilos of clay. I'm speeding through this as the process is exactly the same. And I'd like the smaller dish to nest inside the larger dish to save space in my cupboards. I need this to be at least 2 centimeters smaller in diameter, so I measure carefully. I also want the walls to be around 1.5 centimeters shorter, so that they properly nest. Now that the dishes are leather hard, I'm ready to trim. And because it's a wide dish, I'll use a sponge to support the base. So I upend the dish and center. And I fasten with lugs of clay. Once fastened, I trim across the base. So this is not only an easy form to make, it's also a really simple form to trim. And then I trim around the foot. And I compress the base. This also smooths the clay and the base. I remove the dish and then I can set aside to dry. I bisque fire to 960 degrees Celsius. Then it's time to glaze. I glaze by pouring on the inside of the dish. On the inside, I'm using a good liner glaze. This is important for baking dishes, and particularly where the food is going to be in contact with the glazed surface. These dishes are going to have to weather the temperature change of the oven, so I want to make sure that the glaze is a good fit for the clay. And I'm using a contrasting brush-on glaze on the outside. This is really convenient for my small home studio where I don't have a lot of room for large buckets of glaze. Once I tidy around the base, I'm ready to glaze fire. I'm firing to a cone 6. And my baking dishes are ready. I'm happy that the dishes do nest. Now it's important when using handmade baking dishes that you don't subject them to thermal shock, so heat slowly and cool naturally. Incidentally, heat from the oven is not the same kind of heat that pots are subject to when used with a direct heat source. That is like a gas flame. So baking dishes are generally subject to more even heat. So if you've chosen your clay and glaze carefully and made the walls even in thickness, if you treat them well, then ceramic baking dishes should be reasonably durable. So now I'm going to try these out for a family roast dinner. The smaller dish will work with an apple crumble, so the whole dinner will be cooked and served in these baking dishes. And if you're interested in cooking with a more direct heat source, then check out my clay cooking pot videos. And as always, happy potting!